Hey everyone, my name is Skye and this is Kiko, and we do the Ups and Downs podcast each week, revolving around raw food and a topic. We like to go into different topics because we know that a lot of people think that influencers, like, their life is just smooth sailing. Like, we just post these reels and everyone's like, oh, it's all easy. But we want to bring to light all the ups and downs that we go through. So welcome, Kiko.
Hi, Sky. Hi, everyone. I just realized there's an echo. Are you hearing the echo?
No, not,
Okay,
no.
there's an echo on my side, so let me get the um, headset. Sorry.
Sure. Well, I can get started how this topic
Yeah.
came about, because Kiko was watching another podcast that I did and heard me bring up I ran away basically and had, well, friends, family, police, everyone looking for me for 2 days in the bush in the middle of winter in the freezing cold. And she's like, you just say new things all the time. Like, how did you get there? And I'm like, that was when everything was so horrible for me. My brain had dysfunction before then, but it was just like a coping mechanism. So that's how we got to doing this podcast. Of course, there's tons of trauma. There's tons of trauma. And in fact, my trauma, I was thinking about this yesterday, is processed so well because I know someone's asked me, how do I share so much? And I sit in my truth. There's nothing that I don't feel about myself that I'm happy not to share because it's my truth. And I've just lost Kiko. But it's actually so helpful for me to actually share with you guys. Like, I feel like my brain now, because I've been sharing, like I shared as soon as I started getting well, but let's say I've shared a lot for 3 years. My brain is able to process and cope with a lot of it. I think because I don't know whether you could say offload it, but I frame it in a way that is, I always frame it like, how am I going to, every time something comes up for me, I'm like, how am I going to tell everyone? How am I going to tell everyone? And I feel like that has helped me so much to get it out. Otherwise, it can get stuck inside us. And we don't want trauma stuck inside. We want it to be processed. But I do know a lot of people probably look at me and like, how is she not like always upset or, dealing? I mean, I was sick for 32 years. I missed my entire life up until I was 40. And we can get into that. But also, Kiko, there's an interview on my channel. She's been through a lot as well. And it's actually really interesting when faced with death, even like you're near death, what occurs. And maybe you want to talk a little bit about yours, Kiko.
Yeah, so I'm back. I found the mystery of why it was echoing. It's because I had a YouTube on, so your live went on.
Kiko, you're double broadcasting here, aren't you? You're sending me out to
Exactly.
who knows where.
Exactly. Yeah, so surviving trauma. So yeah, where do you want me to get started on this?
Well, I think I think what trauma can come in everywhere and anywhere. And as I was just saying, is even when I reflect on my healing journey, I can feel trauma. But I think sometimes there's these crux in our lives that define us, that keep flipping us back, or that define our story. I think a really important thing for people to understand is you need to write your story. You really can't rise until you write your story, and you guys get to write your story. And Kiko's story, she's obviously been high raw 20 years. There's been ups and downs, but there's this like crux where she's like, the doctors are telling her to do things, and her whole heart and her head is saying, no, this is all dangerous. So do you want to go into yours?
Yes. So, first of all, I'm really grateful to be back again with Sky. This is our episode 7. I am so,
Yay!
so grateful. I cherish every single moment, and I have been this way. I think I don't count on tomorrow. I cherish every moment. But the incident last year, truly appreciate more of what I am going through every single day. So if you have read if you have read the description of our YouTube channel, it shows that I have gone through like near death experience last year, And you might be confused because I have been on a high raw vegan, and people see me like very energetic and healthy person. But yeah, this topic is very personal, and I wanted to come out and share with Skye. And this is how we sort of got us connected closer in a way. And this is also one of the reasons, Skye has approached me to do this ups and down. And, I want to stay true. I want to, whatever the information I can give to the world that would help everyone's journey, I'm ready to share. So last year, what happened was I have been dealing with endometriosis. So that I have been diagnosed like 8 years ago. And that's the time I moved to France. My husband is French, so we lived in France, Paris for 4 years. And ever since I moved to Paris, for some reason, my health just went down the hill. And I don't know what it was. It might have been just a trigger, moving to a different place. And I was resisting because I have overcome quite a few things with raw vegan diet. I've done quite a few, detox protocols, and that worked quite a bit. So you could say overconfident. And, I have been working on it since 8 years to overcome this endometriosis. And it was just getting worse and worse. And it came to the point last year that I lost so much blood during my cycle. My cycle was getting, before like 8 years, my cycle was normal. And starting from like a few years ago, my period could last for like a month, but a month with the very, very heavy blood. Like, I mean, every day I feel like I have an abortion, or I feel like I have an abortion or miscarriage. Yeah. And because there's a clots coming out, so often. And I was taking iron pills, but of course it was not catching up. And I was just, I guess you could also call it stubborn, that my body would find its way to heal. And, when you hear that when you go through this heavy blood, that some people say that because your body needs to get rid of some some toxin through these cycles. But it came to the point, it was very dangerous. I just could not walk. And yeah, it came to the point that I could not even get up. So I called an ambulance. And when they took me to the hospital, it was at, I think, haemoglobin 4. So that's 40 in Australia. I think that's yeah. And then I thought I could do it. I mean, it's amazing that I still had consciousness. Doctors and nurses always tell me that people are, they lose their consciousness around 5, around 4 to 5. And I said, well, just give me an iron, like, how do you call it? Like you get it through the transfusion, iron infusion. Yeah, I got that. And doctors were not happy because he said that, you are in a very dangerous mode, that you need to be hospitalized at least 1 week. But, I've gone through quite a bit, when I had an ovarian cyst over 20 years ago, which I wrote in my book. I went through the surgery and it just got worse. So, I developed this trauma that I don't trust the Western, hospitals or Western medicine. So anyway, they released me. I had to sign the paper that they are not responsible if I were to die. And I got home. I ended up losing again another, heavy like clot after clot. And that was just, I started to feel very shaky, and I called an ambulance again. And there, finally, I took blood transfusion, which I was trying to avoid for the longest time. But one of the doctor, he said that, of course, it's up to you. It's, you can decide not to receive or not, but it's too bad you're still young and you can still live. Yes, there might be a side effect from a blood transfusion, but you can at least live with this, and that kind of clicked me, and I said, yeah, it's true. So that's what happened last year, and experiencing that near death, going through this near death experience, yeah, I said, every single moment is a miracle. I should not have survived through that. I don't know what was the last blood hemoglobin level, because I was just losing so much before receiving blood transfusion. But yeah, that was my trauma going through, and back to life.
Sure. And that's a lot to go through. So when it comes to my trauma, just so you guys know where my story is coming from and how I became me, right? So my illness started when I was 8. But I think children cope differently. Like, I was sick in bed a lot at doctors, and I had my tonsils out and stuff. But I think, I bounced back from that. Once I turned 16 and I ended up in chronic pain with congenital diseases, and my health just continually declined. I will say the first part of getting sick is the most traumatizing, because you lose. It may not be on blood tests or in any of my history the sickest, far from my sickest, but the most traumatizing, because the body gives out the most alarms. Literally, you're having dizziness, fogging, things you've never felt before. Your stomach's starting to swell and you're in constant flight or fight. And it's real, like an alarm system, because eventually the alarm system, if it's not doing anything, the body will numb it. And I think as I had started to have many surgeries, I've had over 60 surgeries, a lot of them quite small, but then some of them big, where I had my stomach removed, my duodenum removed, top of my intestines removed, 3 major surgeries for that. One of them 14 hours, one of them I think 12 hours. Another one was I think 2 hours, when my liver and kidneys got infected and they had to drain them. But can I be honest, by the time I'm 25 and I'm having these major surgeries, it was just like a regular day. A very traumatizing, but it's not processed the same when you've been sick so long. It almost, one of the things I thought when I first woke up, because all of my illness a lot of it had been idiopathic up until then, though I had a congenital disease, which actually, when they removed it, so it was a second piece of uterus on nerves and ligaments on my spine. And they'd done many surgeries before this. They'd given me hormone replacement. It'd been about 7 years to find this disease. My whole teen, I'd been told there's nothing there. It's in your head. You're anxious. It's overreactive. Your hormones are going out from stress. And then your family doesn't believe you. This is really hard. Then you get it removed. And I carried that photo of it was like a massive cyst near it, but they had to dig in to pull out the disease 4 months. I did not leave the house because it was so hard for me to deal with that. That just not being believed, but also doctors constantly telling family members and you that it's, you're just overreacting when you literally cannot function. They did a biofeedback on me, and they use this for women having babies, and they couldn't get a start reading. So women who are in labor have a start reading. They can use this machine while they have contractions. But on me, the nerves were so fried and firing all the time around my pelvis. There was no start reading. So there was something wrong there, but they thought I was exacerbating. So to be honest, a lot of this just, to me, seems like nothing now, like losing my stomach, having this disease because of what happened coming up. So as I said, I remember waking up, literally being wheeled into ICU and feeling staples all the way from my chest cage to past my belly button.
Yeah, which age was it?
25.
25, yeah.
And then I remember thinking, as they're wheeling me to ICU, well, now they'll believe me. Like, one of the first things I thought when I woke up is, now they'll believe me. Like, now this has come to something. That's how I think of how I don't think modern medicine now is as bad as it was. And it would have been worse. Like, I know my grandma's generation, especially women, anything that came up, that was when Valium came out. My grandmother was addicted to Valium. Because, you know, any symptoms she had after hysterectomy, they didn't give it HRT. They just said it's in your head. Anyway, moving up. So then after this, everything in my back went severely bad, to the point where I was on OxyContin, like 500 milligrams morning and night. Now, if I break a toe or a limb, they're going to give you 5 milligrams every few hours. I'm on 500 in the morning, plus 60 every couple of hours to keep the pain down, plus Valium, plus SSRIs, plus a fentanyl patch of 170 on my arm, which has changed not 3 days, but every 2 days. Then I'm being put in hospital, putting Botox in the spine, local anesthetic in the spine. I'm having ketamine in cardiac units because my heart rate would just go through the roof from pain. And they had to bring it down, plus things like pethidine and morphine when you're in hospital. And this went on for, let's say, from like 26 to 30, because there was a year after I had my stomach removed where things weren't too well. And I put that down to, I didn't eat for months. And I think you go into a bit of autophagy and everything kind of calmed down a bit. But when it came back, I was on a walking stick. I literally, if I went out, I was so medicated, and because I just was in so much pain. Then I had the hysterectomy. I had other surgeries during this time, but the hysterectomy got rid of that acute pain. And then after that, I went through menopause, which was in itself one of the most, and I think that's something that comes up a lot for me, and it's just very hard. You lose who you are or were, and not in a slow, manageable, adaptable way where it's kind of transferred over to different organs. It's literally like, I'm already in shock, been through enough. And I think as now I'm coming off all of these opioids, my body, I'm just vomiting, losing hair, the POTS is getting worse, I'm getting blood sugar issues, I'm collapsing. In ICU, this is where they think I'm not going to make it. And I had this split with reality. And I lost a lot of my memory. It almost, if I could tell you how it led up to that, it's literally like, no matter whether I moved my arm or my body, I had people feeding me, telling me what I needed, moving me to hospital, back from hospital. And in the end, my brain didn't want me to do anything. It was like almost like locked in syndrome, where you just don't move or talk for days because there is no point. The outcome doesn't yield any results. So just like the alarm system of the body shutting down, I shut down. But I also see this as a spiritual awakening, because in this point, you can call someone schizophrenic or seeing things, but I don't believe these are like a broken brain. I believe there's different realities everywhere. You are very blessed if you're staying on this timeline. Like, everything for me before this point was linear. Everything had ups, downs. You could cry, you could mourn. It would be even losing my stomach, whatever. It was still linear trauma. It was still very normal. When you completely dissociate, you lose time, you lose space. It's like you do see things, but it's almost like there's a darkness there or a lightness, which everyone should be grateful they're not constantly tapping into. You want to be streamlined, is how I see it. Anyway, I came out of this, went paleo, did a lot better, but my memory wasn't back. Got shingles through the eye, and that set off PTSD and FND, where I couldn't walk and talk. I had to go to a neurological hospital, learn to do these things. Then I come out of there. Now, you have to understand, I was well for a year. So I was 36. From 36 to 37, I was able to go to the gym. I was able to laugh with my friends. I was able to work for my brother-in-law. I was able to be a normal human being. And that was magical from where I had come. Though I didn't have a lot of my memory back and knew something was missing. It was magical for me. So when I got shingles and one day I can't move my body and I'm reliving things, I was having seizures. I was having like these like convulsions, these like jittery moves. I go to talk and words wouldn't come out. or you start hallucinating. And if you have a look on, if you Google a functional neurological disorder, watching a person go through this is probably one of the most horrific things. When it actually, in actual fact, when it comes up on my feed, someone doing this, because there's so, they'll line it up if you look at all the symptoms. It's literally like almost like it's like having a stroke, but then it's like being possessed. Like you have these like movements in your body which are uncontrollable, and you're trying to talk and nothing comes out, and your whole panic system is on. Plus, you're having PTSD. Now, some of the things that happen at this time I haven't talked about yet, because a lot of it can be blocked off for me. I think there's too much. Some of it gets blocked off. But when I was in the neurological hospital, I would get up and start walking, and everything would fall from underneath me, and I'd fall on the floor. And then every muscle in my body would start crawling towards a blade or something, wanting to end myself. But it's strange. It's more like intrusive thoughts. They're not truly my thoughts. Literally, I would have, and you can see reports of this, people who have been through severe trauma will clench their nail. I was clenching my nails into the floor not to move. It's like fighting with yourself, as if I was so fractured. I was fighting with myself. I knew I didn't want to do that, but everything in my body was telling me to do that. So that's just one event of this. Like some days I'd lay there and just be like, like all day in a neurological hospital. And you have to remember, I'm very conscious that this isn't normal behavior. Like I just can't control it. And this is coming off the back of experiencing life for a year. So this is re-traumatizing me. One of the hardest things was knowing how hard I worked to even get up out of bed, get off those psych drugs they put me on a year ago, and have a little life. And all of a sudden, it's not just ripped away. I can't walk or talk most days. So it's like horrific. So they get me able to do things like butter my toast and tie my shoelaces, and I get home. I'm literally kind of like a vegetable. If I use every muscle in my body to get myself up or do something, I can, but then I'd usually have like seizures or fits, or then panic would come over that I've lost everything again. It's horrible. So I always had carers. Family member would come in when mum and dad were caring. Family members would come in when they traveled. I needed like full-time care. So I was taken up to my sister's husband, so my brother-in-law. His mother has a farm with my nieces. I couldn't even really talk to my nieces. I could get to a car or something, and then I just kind of flop out. I was taken up there. Now, I don't really want to get into everything that happened, but I was already feeling like people are like, come on, just try, you can do it, like as if I had a choice. And I just felt so guilty as well for everything I put things through. For whatever reason, we had a disagreement with this person, and I was like, what's the point? And I just ran. I didn't run. I ran, but then I crash out. It's weird. You can't usually, it was weird. I ran into the bush, and I believed nobody wanted me. I was just constantly sick. Like I don't even believe I'm sick while I'm having like seizures. I didn't believe me anymore. It's really confusing. It's really hard, I guess, to talk about. But what I will say, everything you've heard from when I've dissociated up until this point and everything is so much worse than all the physical things that I ever endured on what I call more of a linear up and down, very normal timeline. This is like, how does this happen to a person? So then I'm in the bush kind of moving around. Even when the SES workers or police or whatever, I would see them, I would move somewhere else. I didn't want to be found. And it was like the middle of winter, and it was up where it's quite cold. And I was in a lot of pain already, and more pain from the cold. And then eventually I actually got in a bin to stay warm, or a trash can, you call them. And then I was almost thrown in the compactor, you know, where they crush up, because I fell asleep. Anyway, eventually a man found me and it said, "You the missing girl." And I didn't even know. I thought no one was looking for me. I kept dissociating. My sister found me, and then I was taken to a hospital and like given fluids and a shower and stuff. And then I was put in a psych unit. And that was like the only place I didn't want to go. I was in one for 10 months. I was scheduled, I think, twice in there, up where the farm was, and then brought back down into Sydney. And I had FND, but I was reliving things. It was so horrible. I remember trying to help the lady in the kitchen some days. I could barely wash a dish. It was so horrible. Anyway, I end up finally in a private psychiatric unit. Now, these, you cannot compare private and public. Public is like a jail and private is like a hotel, where there's a smorgasbord. Basically, everyone's kind of, this is what it's like in Sydney, everyone's kind of drugged the same. Everyone has been through horror stories before they've ended up there, as in like, to get so broken, the stories in there. I think I told one about the man who was a police officer. He was about to lose his leg from diabetes. And the year before, his wife had a new baby. So it was the fourth child. And driving into Melbourne to see him, and a truck driver that was drugged took out the whole car. He never met his new child. All his children, wife, the new baby died. This is like these horror stories you hear in there. It's horrible. Then when you move over to a private facility, it's like how expensive it is every day is off the charts, but you're given like a private doctor who medicates you more personally. You get your own GP, you get your own nutritionist, you get your own psychologist. Like, it's literally like this hotel. You can come and go more. Not that I could do much. So I was put back on stimulants like amphetamines and SSRIs. Now, these medications I've been on in the past, they did not fix me, but they got me functioning. Like, I could sit up. Anyway, then I get back home and then I start drinking to cope. My liver fails. I'm back in hospital. And that's when mum and dad...
Skye. So yeah, you have been sharing a very, very intense story. It just gets more intense. So I don't mean to, keep your thoughts, but I just wanted to double check. When you ran away, were you were you already in a psychiatric unit, or
No.
you were living with your parents?
Yeah, I'd come out of the neurological hospital for about a month and a half, and I had like carers at that time to care for. Basically, FND is a neurological disorder, but it comes with, you'll see people have bipolar tendencies, schizoid tendencies. I believe you can't distinguish I was also diagnosed at the time when I was in the public hospital with PTSD, but shell shock, and it hadn't been seen. It's not seen. Now, I'd flop over for days from the waist. You couldn't get me up, like shell shock victims. And I don't think you can take away that I had shingles, and the shingles inflames the brain. And I think it just lit up all of my past, like all too much. And then to cope, I think my body just broke. Like, I literally just could not, my limbs could not move, and it just broke itself and it's like a protective mechanism. I talk about this a lot, that I know that my body would rather feel physical pain than bring back emotions. So if I start getting physical pain in my body, I know that there's emotions that are trying to come up, that it won't let, not too much too fast. But once you get shingles, it's too much. It's just too much inflammation, I think.
So you were taken to private psychiatric unit, and why is that? Why did they change?
You want to be in private. I had private health funds back then. Since going raw, I've let that go. But you want to get out of public. And also, so they did not know if what I was having was all psychiatric. Like, yes, they believe I have splits with reality, but because I never had any psychiatric issues, I wasn't even depressed when I was sick. So I was sick up until I was 36, and then I split. And that isn't very normal behavior. Usually there's tendencies, depressive tendencies, anxiety. I had anxiety around being sick, but it wasn't like, and I had ADHD. That's the only thing I'd been diagnosed with, but that doesn't mean that you are having, you have schizophrenia or bipolar. So when I first got scheduled, they believed I split, which people can do in their life, and that never happens again. Like, they just have a split, and that's, and they come back and live their life. Some people split at the same time every year, and someone just before Christmas on the same day every year will end up being scheduled, and they don't even know it's happening. So the brain is like a really fascinating thing. But when I was really sick, I also went to a sleep doctor because I just couldn't get up. This FND where you're just like laying there all day. And he wanted me to go back on my old medication, which was a stimulant. Now, in a public hospital, they kind of just general drugs. You've got like Epilim, lithium, Respirator, just very basic, and they're injecting me, and this is making me, it's not good. And they didn't want to do it in there, so I had been in a private facility before, so they contacted my doctor and did a transfer. And once you're in there, it's so different. It really is. But by that stage, I've been in a psych hospital for 10 months. So I'm really institutionalized. Like but I found safety in that as well, as in like that you get up at the same time every day, you eat, you have people making your bed, you have people, the stimulants, and I believe had a twofold effect, like the SSRIs and the stimulants. And I was on a lot of stimulants, I believe they also lock into a part of my brain, which was already a neural network. So I've already established for many years I was on amphetamines and SSRIs when I was sick for ADHD and for pain. And to give me old meds also locks me into a part of my brain which was already established. So I believe that was the first line of help. But then the second line is that it stimulates you. You get moments where you can get your body up and moving. But then I also still had trauma. So I went back with mum and dad after like these 10 months in hospital. So they're running away, and then 10 months in psychiatric hospitals, and then back with mum and dad.
Sorry, so private psychiatric unit, you stayed 10 months, and then public?
No, public was about 10 months, and then probably 10 months, 9 to 10 months, and then about a month and a half in private.
Okay.
And then I go back to mum and dad's, and I wasn't someone who throughout this drunk, but I actually will be honest here, is I would do the drugs hardly worked anymore. Any drug did not work. Everything I guess wanted to come out or was just so detrimental. But when I'd have like a glass of wine, I noticed that my PTSD was so much better. Like literally, I didn't have to relive things. So I started drinking wine, and I don't mean like I'd get up and like scull, because I already had no stomach. My liver was already ruined. It wasn't until 3 months in completely ruined and of drinking, but I would sip on it all day. Now, I had 2 psychologists and a psychiatrist at this time who knew I was doing this, and they weren't too worried because normal average people can come home from work and drink a bottle of wine and a couple of beers at night. It's not like I was some days topping it up with vodka. It was what I could find in the house. I mean, I was taking it from my parents a lot of the time, if not having it delivered when they were out or something. But 3 or 4 months of this, and I ended up in being rushed to hospital, because every time I could barely stand up as it was. And when I was now, I was like falling over. I hit my head or something happened. And then they did my liver profile. And I think actually a nurse had come and took my blood, and my blood work was already shot. Now it was like my liver was going. So my body wasn't making proteins. I was already anemic. A lot of nutrient profiles weren't up to standard in my blood. And now I'm drinking. And then in that hospital, obviously I didn't drink, but it took 3 weeks for them to stabilize me. And when I left, I couldn't come home. Mum and dad said, you have to do this yourself now. This is where my rock bottom happens, where I'm so dissociated. I'm not medicated anymore. I left and tried to go to a rehab unit, was having seizures. And then I had an argument with someone there, and they kicked me out. But because I was having seizures, they took me to a hospital, the local public hospital, where I was having more seizures. And then this is where I once again slept outside the hospital. The hospital, like security guards, ushered me to move on. And it was freezing still. So I'm sleeping, holding on to heaters outside the hospital. And I told you, there's 2 girls I remember. One of them gave me a cigarette because I was still smoking then. And I know cigarettes are bad, but just to have something keep you warm, because I remember Elizabeth and Cara, and my brain did not work, but I promised myself I'd remember their names. And one got me a vegan sausage roll. I had a phone with money, but I couldn't use it. When you've got FND, I can't push buttons or understand things. I could come to, but when that moment would be, I don't know. Also, I was not on stimulants anymore that would give me some sort of focus or something. I was off everything. And so then my brother-in-law helped me after the hospital. He was in contact because mum and dad weren't talking to me. So he helped me get a hotel near where I used to live. And then once again, I went wandering or got lost, and they took me back to hospital into the psych unit. And this time I know all the nurses now, whether it's private or public, I knew them all. I said, so I felt more comfortable in there. I didn't know where my life was. I could barely focus. They tried to put me on new drugs and I felt so much sicker. And this is where I said, I was in an acute unit. I said to the doctor, please take me off these like strong meds. And she did. And at least like I'd have these like outbursts, but I think that's part of coming off stimulants. You can't regulate your mood. But I knew the nurses and I was always after like, I'm really sorry. But I felt like you could move forward. The thing with drugs is you can't process, you're trapped. There are times when people are like really acute that I believe like you can suppress or numb or stabilize, but I've never processed anything medicated, nothing. So I could feel I was moving forward. I'd been vegan a couple of years. My blood work was still terrible. I then I'm still living in hotels and sometimes sleeping outside just because, I don't know, just did. And eventually, I can't remember, but someone in my family helped me get a place. And at this point, I'm still vegan. I'm so freaking sick. I just don't cook the food. And this is where I start to notice a dramatic difference. But also, I think the dramatic difference also so noticeable for me is when your blood work and you're so sick, if you give your body a bit of hydration, and I've said this before, if any time you go to a hospital and no matter what you've got going on, if someone gives you some fluid, you come to. Like you come to a bit because we're mostly fluid and a lot of disease is dehydration. So I believe first and foremost is I was just feeling more hydrated. As soon as I cook something, all this FND, my stomach. In fact, I was so unwell when I first moved. I'd get off my bed and there'd be literally blood wherever there was a hole kind of from my body. I was really, really sick. And within 6 weeks of eating pure raw food. So there was no blender, there was no recipes. It was literally a cutting board, veggies, a bit of fruit, a few nuts. Not too many of the nuts because they just supported me. A little bit of fermented food, but mostly it was like cucumbers and carrots and celery and apple or mango or avocado. And 6 weeks I had no symptoms. And my blood work showed for the first time everything was coming up. And yeah, so that's.
Oh my God, it's so intense. And I don't know I mean, every part of this story is just so intense and powerful. But it's interesting. You said that the first one, when you were at 16, when you were 16 years old, that was the most traumatic.
Out of the so also you have to understand, now you can understand why my brain, as it processes things for many years, it only has just stopped recently, refers to different skies because there is different skies. Like it's literally like living lives within a life, right? There's, I was 8, I got sick. And then I think people usually refer to them as like, oh, when I was a kid or when I was a teen or in my 20s. But I have these different labels of, Skye when she was sick as a kid. And then there was Skye who had all the stomach and pelvic issues from teens to 20s. And like I would break myself up. And then as I've been on the raw foods and after juicing, not during juicing, but after, I started to get big bits of memory back. But as for before I was 16, life is probably more like what a lot of people have, and they have it through their teens and their 20s. And yes, there's hard times, but they're not like, this was literally like I was so sick and I didn't understand why I couldn't do what my friends were doing. And then I think you become numb. So I don't think in my 20s, my life, I knew it was just normal to have constant scans, constant specialists, have surgeries, have hormone replacement, have more medication. And then by the time I'm 25, once I lost my stomach. So it's like a numbing effect, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to, sickness. Where if this becomes your daily life, it becomes normal in your body. And I've gone through exclusive pain with this endometriosis. It was constantly, I couldn't even walk for like 2 weeks out of 1 month. I was in bed. I just couldn't move, and no painkiller would do. Like I've taken painkillers, and my pain was just so excruciating. It was that, I just had to wait. And I've tried so many ways to remove my pain or come out of this under matrices. But this story of yours is just, well, first of all, I'm just so grateful that you came out. You came out of it. It's just, I think it's so intense, and it's just, most people wouldn't survive, right? Most people would just end, not knowing what's going on, and just one day you're just out of this world, and somehow your soul decided to stay, right? And generally speaking, for me as well, last year's instance, I should not have survived. I mean, nurses, a nurse, they came to my room, to see that there is someone still living at hemoglobin 2 that they have never seen in their 40 years or 50 years of career. And yeah, I realized that there is a place for Western medicine. I'm so grateful that they were able to give me blood transfusion. And I'm like so energetic. My husband thinks that I have too much energy. He can't keep up with me. And my purpose now after that incident is to share as much as possible that could help others. It's not, I love raw vegan, and that truly saved me, that not just physical health but mental health. Mental health is the biggest thing for me. When I stay on raw vegan diet, I am I can stay calm. I am the nicest person you would see, but as soon as I introduce cooked food, I become moody. And I'm not dogmatic. I'm just sharing that this is my journey for now. And I know lots of people, they are completely fine physically and mentally, eating whatever, they might eat out quite a bit. But for me, raw vegan diet is it's the center of my life. And I didn't want to share this information that I was going through hell, under matrices. And that's one of the reasons I didn't want to take any pills from Western medicine world. But when it comes to life or death, I still have a message to share. My soul decided to stay. So, and I think yours as well. I mean, you have gone through so much that, and I was telling Skye off, in the private chat, that I don't know anyone like Skye where, who has gone through so much trauma, so many intense incidents, and Skye remains a light. She's like a sunshine, and I don't see any shades, but actually you have gone through so much, and then that shades are a part of you, that's your driving force as well, but I don't feel it.
So I also think, first off, when I was sick, all I wanted to do was save my life. I was in so much pain that, or when my stomach's removed, is I don't want to die. One time when my stomach was I was about to leave the hospital, and projectile red blood everywhere and collapsed and was barely conscious. And each time, I don't want to die. And you hear people who take their life or jump off of something, and the thing they last think about is how they wish they hadn't jumped. And it is in us not to die. And I think because I was pushed so much to the brink all the time, is my mindset was not how do I escape this, but it was how do I pull myself out of this. I also knew all those years I was sick with my stomach that if I survived this, that this is what I'd be doing, or something along the lines of if I can get out of this, I have to help others with what they do. But I do think that whole time I wanted to live, not go. Like, I wanted to understand life. I also know that because this happened at such a young age, you freeze there. So wherever you got your acute disease, if you get it in your teens or your 20s, you freeze there. As in, like, you don't age like other people do, where your linear timeline and respect to who you are is gauged by age milestones like everyone else. Is I'm frozen, that's pushed to the side, now we survive. And what was really hard when I first got up after that first dissociation at 36 um, was that it's like, it can be really hard to think back on who you were and who you have to become. Because before, I was like, I had a pain or an ache where, and like, someone would go, do you want to go to the beach? And I have like a pain or an ache all the time, or like a pretty bad, obviously pretty bad. I'd be like, okay, hot water bottle, walking stick, I've got the medication, have I had some sugar because I had blood sugar problems then. That'll get me 15 minutes. Your whole life is focused on getting somewhere or not being anywhere. And then once I'm up, you're supposed to live a whole day, no medication, no regulating with food, no, what else? You don't have a walking stick. You don't understand life. You've got all this time, and then you sit there and you're also, this is like the first time I was in a psychiatric hospital, you sit there and you're like, you don't understand where time went, and you feel 100. So although I was only 36, I was like, my life's over. Plus, this is all compounded by, if you've gone through menopause or if you've had a hysterectomy, you'll know you feel like you lose part of yourself. You change. And so I've gone from being a 16-year-old girl going through all that, being 36. So it's what, there you go, it's 20 years.
But
And yeah, that was like that whole emotional side of facing things, as you can see, is just, you can't describe it to someone. I can't.
why do you think you wanted to keep on living after going through so much, so many instances of trauma? Because for me, I wanted to die actually when I was going through endometriosis. I kept telling my husband that I just want to leave.
Yeah.
It's just too heavy.
I think it is because I was frozen at 16. So I think if you freeze someone at an age where everything is an opportunity, they stay there. If you've already got someone who's gone through age appropriate milestones throughout their whole life, and now they're sick, they kind of comprehend that it was going to be downhill from anywhere. Like you can talk yourself into negativity. I don't know. I also, might just be me, but I don't know. I was always,
I do.
I think
I
there's a
think
few things lining up.
Yeah, I do think that explains, because for me, I had an amazing life. I feel like I have, overachieved whatever I wished for. It came true. And I feel like, I had an amazing husband, and it's not logic for me to say that I want to stay and have an amazing life with him. But I feel like I have achieved so much that, okay, I mean, that's it. I just don't want to go through this pain. But again, that comes back to, pain and sickness becomes a norm, and you can't think properly.
So I also want to talk on something as well, which is when I was forced to so what I believe happened for that first part of my life is, I'm a white rich female. And that means that I have extremely good medical care, extremely good medication. Anything happened, where I lived, I was very comfortable. So I think then you strip that away from a woman, where you're in a psychiatric unit, there's no pain relief. Like, you've literally been numb to an inch of your life for 10 years. There's none of that. You're not talking to your family, even from the first part. Dad came in a few times, I talked to him towards the end, but you just don't want to be around anybody. You've lost control. So a lot of what I did, being a white rich female, if you complain enough, you will get another top doctor, another expert, another, which keeps you in a reality of feeling safe. Do I think that's good? I do. But when you've only known that I've now shifted. Everyone in that acute psychiatric unit is pretty much homeless or poor. I'm now, there's like, I'm given a suitcase of clothes. I really couldn't, the clothes still each time were just so old. Like you're being shoved into this reality. You're being drugged by not choice. They're just drugging you with things which are making you hallucinate more. And you are in there for months where your only friends are people who live in housing commission or the street. So you're shifted from this privilege to waking up and seeing how most people live, if I'm totally honest. Like I've said before, I went to a private school. I've always been given whatever I wanted, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But that reality of like can keep us comfortable. I don't think I had a choice, actually. I don't know whether any of us have a choice, but the shift I took was so like I'm now no, they took the rest of the medication off me. They should not have done that as quickly. Like any of those medications should be weaned off. I feel like I lay there for weeks, my bones were breaking. I feel like I was on fire. That whole side of the trauma is like another thing in itself. I was going to the toilet on the floor. It's horrible. Jail, I think, would have been nicer. So it's basically like going from this privilege to jail. That's exactly what it's like. And then you come out of that and you never take anything for granted, especially that first year. Everything you get, your parents help you with getting some clothes. I had some money, but it was only from disability payments. And everything you get your hair done, you don't take it for granted. People can't afford any of that. That your first awakening is that. And then I come through and I think I've got my little life and I lose everything again. And if you actually understood what it's like to come off like the rest of the opioids and an SSRI where you just don't sleep for weeks. I've been through 2 batches of this where you don't sleep for months. I do black out for about 40 minutes a night, but it's like torture. Anyway, so you don't want to go back there and you end up back there. And so there's like this other level of appreciation for life. Like if I can survive that, that's why I say this first part of my life, although it was horrific, especially pain-wise, is I had the best of the best of the best of the best. And if the best wasn't the best, I had more of the best. And then you learn everything's taken away. But that's why I call it my awakening, right? And that's why I want to say about Western medicine is we come to raw foods and it gives us so much it gives us so much that we cling to that it's everything, that it's, raw foods, everything. Are there doctors? There's raw foods. Do you need this? No, it's raw foods, because it changes our life so much. But what I notice now that I'm really connected to a lot more raw vegans is each person becomes faced with usually a life and death experience where you need a doctor. Mine wasn't life or death, it was shingles and a broken toe. But when you start to see your life, you get raw foods and you love it, but you fear everything. Everything's, I don't like that. You're eating that. Very judgy, very saying things about other people, where once you can see everything as love again, this is where you want to get to, where you're like grateful for the doctor that you get to talk to and he explains the rash and he says, here's a viral antiviral. No, thanks, I'm not taking that. That's my decision. And I get my blood test once a year. I'm so grateful for it. I get my hair dyed again. I love that. There's things where when you can come into the space of love, you realize you're not that raw vegan who's like, you don't do this and you don't do that and you're not going to get anywhere, because it's all about love. Like as much as we think it's the food, or we've got like breathing exercises or meditation has healed me, you will cling to whatever gives you life. But when you can re-blossom and see value and virtue in people you thought were negative, they're probably going through something and they'll need time away, but you can be around them a bit. The more you see life from love, you will transform into who you are meant to be.
Yeah, I feel like after going through that near-death experience last year, I always come back to that point. The reason I started, I said yes to this ups and downs of raw, and the reason I'm more active on YouTube is that because I have that, because I can lose my life at any time. I could be healthy and, who knows what, I could be just walking down on the street and some people just die that way. And last year's incident in the hospital, it was, true realization for me to say, oh, okay, So what do I need to do? What do I want to do for the rest of my life? Because our life is never guaranteed. We don't know when we are going to die. And because I have gone through that experience last year, it's my I guess driving force now. And whatever I'm going through, this year I have gone through a very, very intense ups and down. Physically, I have been excellent, but there have been so many instances that I have shared with Skye, and I haven't shared with most of you guys. And I always have this point point of my life last year saying, okay, so is it really that important that what I'm going through? Because for me now is sharing love, sharing love to others, sharing love to myself, and all those instances of what I have gone through. It's not a big deal. Like just giving a bit of example, like I had two cases of needing to hire a lawyer. I have like very close family's deaths that I've gone through, and like it's just a lot more things that I haven't shared yet because it hasn't settled. But I always have look back and say, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, I could lose my life tomorrow or now, but what's important is, am I proud of myself, of my action? That's, and I actually gave this synonym to a friend of mine who was going through a very hard time. I say, well, think of it. I mean, doesn't matter, what's the most toughest thing is, what's the worst thing that could happen now? It's to die. But to die, it's not that bad either.
Yeah. I used to think about that when I was younger, as in like, I'm stressing over this, or this seems to be a problem. But if the worst case scenario in every situation could be that you die and you're not scared of that, what are you worried about?
Right.
But I also think that you have such a valid point there. If you've been through near-death trauma or like life-shattering trauma, it becomes your point of reference. It's not bad. And I think if you're constantly living near-death experiences, is what I remember so vividly is I was in so much pain that I was always looking for relief. So death would be more pain, I think, in my head a lot of the time. So a lot of the time, all I wanted to do was be out of pain. My whole hip and pelvis and this nerve pain in my face and my fingers from this congenital disease was so horrific. My whole goal in life was to be out of pain. And to death would be self-harm, would be hurting myself more when my body's literally shattering. So when people are near death, like hanging off a cliff, you don't hear them saying, get me a gun, I want to kill myself. They're struggling for life. And I think that's what we have to look at, is that there's so much. And every time I've overcome something like really horrific and tragic, is I have so much more zest for life. So like I do believe it probably would have killed me or broken me if I didn't find raw foods. I just can't. I think it was too much to process. And what I mean by that is where I was, how sick I was. And when you start dissociating, how I didn't walk in front of a car or just end up in a trash can where I'm like compacted, because you aren't connected to the reality that people know. You're in your own world and you find safety in there. And it's actually interesting because I'm at a stage now where I actually sometimes want part of that back. And I think it's a safety, right? Is if big things are coming up, you don't want to be totally present. There's a comfort in, what I call guides and dissociation and being content in your own space as opposed to not wanting to be around people. And that I find interesting, but very normal for the brain to also do. So
there's so much to dissect on our stories, but maybe we can go to the comments, because we are almost 1 hour.
Yep. Okay. So let me bring up. Okay. So Precious has said she appreciates all I share, and it helps people. So EMFs. This was coming up when you were talking about your journey and that you were eating a raw diet and you were still bleeding all the time. So I'm not sure if she's referring to were EMFs causing it, but it was when you were talking about that part.
EMF is the electronic magnetic field.
Electromagnetic field created by, you could say, lights and phones, and basically an alternate current,
yeah.
which is not
Yeah,
direct,
I know.
not
I've tried
grounded.
everything. Yeah, I've tried everything to cut everything, and nothing was working. You can just name everything, and I probably have tried everything.
Yeah, so here we go. Yes, Kiko, in a high EMF area in Japan also.
I think so.
You're very grounded though. A lot of your time is spent in the mountains or bike
Yeah,
riding or out in your garden, or it's not like you're in a building all day around computers.
yeah. Honestly, I thrive when I was living in New York City. I also thrive when I was living in Tokyo. That's a high EMF area, I think. But I am living in Kyoto, where we are surrounded by mountains, and I do go hiking. But for some reason, that was, I don't think it was helping, but it was not obvious. Like, it wasn't helping me much to change that. But yeah, thanks, Precious, for your comment.
And she said, thank goodness you survived.
Thank you.
So Apple said, hello. Hey, Apple.
Hey.
And then Tessa, hey, Tessa. This was when I was talking, said, wow, that's real trauma. I didn't drink or do drugs, but I was raised in an environment shaped by emotional neglect.
Oh, yeah.
So what I think happens with people who have or feel emotional neglect is they hopefully rise and become self-sufficient, as in like able to, especially happens from a young age, is you're able to self-soothe. So when there's stressful things in the environment that occur where people never had to face these in their life, you find they tend to have issues. So I also studied psychology for 5 years. I never finished my degree, but I love like all of this topic. I do believe it helped me when I was sick in some way. But they say that people who become resilient from emotional neglect have this self-soothing ability that they learnt from a young age. That people who face trauma as they're older have never had to self-soothe. So Apple has said, Skye's critical thinking schools blow me away. Thanks.
Yeah.
I like to know why. I believe everything happens for a reason. And I think about, I am the person I am because of everything I just told you. You take one element of that away and I may not be me. So I sit in gratitude for the journey to make me strong and see the world the way I do. Yeah, so that's the...
Yeah, and I'm really great. I'm so grateful for our connection, Skye, and thanks everyone. Tessa, Apple, Precious. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone else who commented. I really appreciate your message, comments and questions. That allows us to connect better. And Skye, I'm so, I don't know if this is the right word, but I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy that we can connect this way, because I feel so, you're such an open book, even though you have gone through so much. You're such a sunshine and an open book. And I don't have to double think, oh, should I ask this? Was it okay that I asked this question? I mean, Scott, in the beginning, I was questioning, oh, I hope that, because I'm very, very curious person. I like to know everything.
Oh, you're
And
like me. I just tell it all.
yeah,
What do
exactly.
you want to know?
Yeah, Sky is going deep and, sharing everything. And this, missing girl incident, like, Sky has shared this journal, which is very well-known journal in
Newspaper. I
Australia.
think the Daily Telegraph, and well, you used to search Skye Conway before I became like an influencer or sharing a lot on social media, and all that came up was missing girl, missing girl, missing girl, but now comes up like food saved her life, all these recipes, and I'm like, I'm changing things up here.
Yeah, that's fantastic that you're changing your story even in Google search. It's fantastic.
Yes, and we all have the power to do that.
Yeah, and I love that we embrace all of what we have gone through. We are who we are because of what we have gone through, and that's what I like to encourage others as well. That they might be going through some hard time. They might be ashamed of what they have done recently. I say just embrace it. That's so beautiful. You would have some learning experience because of that. Every single thing that we are going through, it's so beautiful. Everyone's journey is so different. That's so beautiful.
And I think what motivates me to share and have no reserve is when you've been through so much, you realize your story could possibly stop somebody else going through that much. And I don't have the right to not share, because how I see life and people is we're all from the one source or God. We're just splinters of the same source, and we are souls, but you're all me and I'm all you, and I don't have the right to hold that. And imagine sharing one recipe or one part of my journey impacted some girl who has pelvic pain, and it may not fix everything, but it's a step for her. I feel I never had the right. I think that's what my story has taught me, is if I have endured so much and I found something that's helping me, you don't hold back. You just share.
Yeah.
So,
And Marabella mentioned, oh, hi, Marabella.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys. Hey, Marabella.
Oh, that's so nice.
It is so nice. And it's been lovely. And we'll be back next week. I mean, we can continue talking on. I feel like this is such a huge topic.
Yes. How can we dissect on Skye's journey? It's just one word is so intense. And anyway, yeah, we'll be back. I'm happily back next week.
We will. And we'll hope everyone has a great week. And jump on YouTube in a couple of hours. I am going to be making maple miso sweet potato.
Excited.
I'm excited. So join me for that. Have a look on my story on Facebook or Instagram. It'll have the countdown because everyone's in different time zones. It's midday for Australia, Australian Eastern Standard Time. So yeah. Precious has said, I'm studying right now, but I couldn't turn your stories off. So captivating. I think the title of this video should include stories of overcoming experience of agonizing pain. That's a good title for a book too, or a movie. We could do a movie.
That's great.
The poor person has to play me. We'll be like, I'm still here.
Yeah. Happy studying, Precious. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon.
Have a great week. Bye.